A lot of times we say in this day and age, he was kind of may have been a micromanager a little bit when we manage all the stuff and we kind of jump into these little things. Now, I don't think technically this is micromanaging. There's a close similarity into it because it's like, well, I need to do it because I don't trust you to do it yourself. I don't have confidence that you have the ability. In this particular situation, we see that Saul said, I don't trust you, Samuel, that you're going to be here the allotted time. And I feel that it has to be done. I got to do this burnt offering. Again, he did not obviously understand there was a relationship with God. And we see that later. First of all, the burnt offering was not his job. He was not supposed to be doing a burnt offering. In fact, he never even set up an altar before that. We know that because we see that in 1 Samuel 14:35. It talks about the fact that Saul set up an altar for the very first time. Later in 15:30, it says that Saul really was not that godly. I want to read to you from 15:30 real quick. I have sinned. Yet honor me now, please, before the elders of my people and before Israel, and return with me that I may worship the Lord your God. He references God as Samuel's God, not my God. He's like, I want to worship my God. He never references God as my God. He references it as your God. We see that he wasn't even godly, yet at that same time, he thought, well, I could just set up the burnt offering. A lot of times, I think we get so caught up in the ceremony that we end up kind of worshiping the ceremony more than we worship God, who the ceremony is designed for. God says all throughout, we see it in Isaiah in particular, where he says, I don't care about the sacrifices. I want your heart. I think we make that mistake a lot. We kind of focus on that area. But that, again, that's from a relationship side. There are many situations throughout history that we can see where people kind of jumped into work they weren't supposed to be doing, and it had a negative impact on the people they were leading. First example I want to bring up is Charles XII. Charles XII was the king of Sweden. He took over the kingship at age 15. He was a brilliant military leader. He defeated all of the other countries around him, until he was left with Russia. And he defeated Russia many times, even though Russia had superior forces in front of him. He forced most of the countries around him into submission. But Sweden never became a gigantic long-term world power like Russia did for many years. And partly is because Charles XII was killed in his 30s. Now, it's unclear whether he was killed by a stray bullet. There was arguments that he was killed by musket fire from far away. There were some theories that he was assassinated. No one exactly knows how he was killed during that time. In fact, his body had been exhumed several times for them to do an autopsy to make a determination of how he was exactly killed. But the one thing we do know is where he was killed. He was killed at the trenches, in the front of the trenches. Now, this is not a situation of leading from the front and leading the charge. That's not a situation there. They were encamped at that area, and he was around the trenches. Now, we don't know exactly what he was doing. I could deduce that he might have been inspecting the trenches at that time, but we do know this, is that leaders should never be just kind of standing at the front line in trench warfare. That's not how that's supposed to work. And as a result of him being where he wasn't supposed to be, doing part of the business he wasn't supposed to be doing, we can see that he got killed from it, that he was not able to lead successfully in that way. Another example of a poor leadership characteristic is President Jimmy Carter. I'm not discounting people or political parties or anything with that when I bring up some of these people, particularly in the U.S. presidential history. I'm merely pointing out flaws that they might have had so that, again, that we can learn from it. President Carter was not considered to be a very strong president for us. For example, one of the things that President Carter was known for, he was known for inspecting the tennis courts at the White House. He would double check the math on proposals, and even took a speed reading course, not so that he can become more effective on it, but it was so that he can try to read all the documents instead of saying, hey, you're my staff person, I need you to give me a summary of what is said so that I can make the decisions. The result of him micromanaging not only kept him from prioritizing the right things, which put us into probably a much stronger recession during that time, during the late 70s, put us into a oil and gas crisis. We had problems with the Middle East during a large part of that time. but also his staff was discouraged and disgruntled. We see many people in this country had kind of lost hope in our country. We were falling under the coattails of the Nixon scandal with Watergate and other problems that we had with Nixon. And then we have someone to take over who really was an ineffective leader. As a result of that, the morale of the country was at an all-time low, at least for that generation. We see where a lot of that can take place.